Welcome back to Two Keto Dudes. This is Carl Franklin from Connecticut in the United States. And in February 2016, I put myself on a ketogenic diet to take control of my metabolism. In just 2.5 months, I managed to reverse all my markers of type 2 diabetes with diet alone. As of now, I'm 80 pounds lighter with no signs of diabetes or heart disease.
Hi, I'm Richard Morris in Canberra, Australia. I've been on a ketogenic diet since April of 2014, and when I started, I was very sick with complications from type 2 diabetes. Within 6 months of starting a ketogenic diet, all of my biomarkers of disease had disappeared. I've lost about 100 pounds. I've completely turned my health around.
And this show is a document of our experiences thriving for years in nutritional ketosis.
Yeah, and reversing diabetes.
Absolutely. And hopefully that might help a few people who are curious about this kind of dietary hacking.
Yeah, we're not doctors. We don't want to give any medical advice, but we are keen to share our own experiences. We're actually both software developers, so we're not afraid of a little technical detail, are we, Carl?
No.
We have done some research into our own deranged metabolisms and the science behind them, and we share studies that we found in the show notes.
And you'll probably work out pretty quickly that we're both foodies.
Oh, yeah.
We love to cook and we love to eat.
Yep.
In every episode, we both share a keto recipe that cannot be ignored.
It cannot.
Nope. Okay, maybe this one can be ignored, but all right, most of them. All right, so let's start podcast number 140, Low Carb Sydney with Dr. Paul Mason.
Heard you say you're due for a little.
Okay, Richard, do we have any apologies or corrections from last week's show?
Let's see. Last week's show was 139, cardiologist Nadia Ali on cholesterol. We have one apology. Last week, Carl referred to LDL as a protein.
Right.
Well, a protein is just a single polymer of amino acids bonded together covalently. It's a single molecule, whereas a lipoprotein is hundreds of molecules. LDL is an example of that. It's really just a large droplet of hydrophobic molecules like triglycerides, cholesterol, fat-soluble vitamins. It's collectively, they're called lipids, but it's like a big oil droplet wrapped in a skin of molecules called phospholipids. And they have an outer shell of phosphate ions that are water-soluble, and the inner bit, the inner tail of these phospholipids is all fatty acids. So it's sort of like a glob of fat on the inside.
You know, you biochem majors are all alike. You just,
Well, it's not a protein. It's not a protein.
You're absolutely right. To be accurate, it's not a protein.
Yeah, there are some proteins involved. Wrapping around this parcel of oils is one or more proteins. It tells the body how to address the package. So that's what the ApoB is. It tells the body where the droplet came from and where it's got to go to, all the tissue that's able to load it up. So, yeah, that's what it is.
But, this little gaffe is really kind of enlightening to me about how the English language, and especially when we're talking about science, is kind of vague and inexact. At the same time, it is exact if you understand what you're talking about, right? So to me, in the English language, lipoprotein, well, the last word in that compound word is protein. And and therefore I would think it's a protein.
It's a kind of protein, yeah.
But it's many proteins, right? But just to simplify, because it speaks to how complex these things are. That we're trying to simplify this for the common person and not overwhelm them, but at the same time, we have to be accurate. And so I really appreciate that you brought the true definition of what a lipoprotein is for everybody.
You can hear experts getting some of these things wrong as well. I've heard cardiologists refer to cholesterol and lipoproteins interdependently. So they're referring, my cholesterol is I've gone to this patient and their cholesterol is high. The cholesterol is just one of the molecules carried inside a lipoprotein. So, it's common. We try to be as precise as we can. Mm-hmm. That's why we have an errata section. And that's why we ask people, we're going to get it wrong over and over again. In fact, we did a whole show about the things we got wrong. Please write in and tell us when we stuff up so that we can make a correction.
Absolutely. And thank you, Richard, for that.
Yeah.
So let's revisit what a ketogenic diet is.
Sure.
Ketogenic diet is one that puts you in a state of ketosis where you burn fat for energy rather than glucose. Mm-hmm. And one way, the way that we did it anyway, is to limit your carbohydrates to 20 grams or less per day.
Mm-hmm.
Protein is moderate, and we use the guideline of 1 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of lean body mass every day. But in reality, most people tend to eat the same amount of protein they did before.
Yeah.
The body regulates that pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And all of our energy we get from fat. Either the fat on your plate or the fat from that Krispy Kreme that you ate a decade ago.
That's right.
And if you're just starting keto, go ahead and listen to our Starting Keto show at start.2keto.com. All right, buddy, I'm anxious. I haven't talked to you in a week, so how was it?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I wrapped up Low Carb Gold Coast. I went for a body surf on Monday morning with Professor Grant Schofield and Dr. Catherine Crofts.
Wow.
And then hopped in a plane and flew back to Canberra. And now I'm getting ready. I've got my exam week this week.
Yeah.
And I also got some more dry ice yesterday, so I'm going to try not to blow my hand off this time. Make some more dry ice cream.
I really got to do that. I haven't done it yet. I haven't had time.
Yeah. Well, next week I've got a biology exam on Friday, and then on the following Saturday, I'm supposed to be doing a chemistry exam, but I'm also supposed to be emceeing Low Carb Sydney, so I have to get a supplementary exam organised for that.
Oh, man.
But the other thing is this week I'm getting ready for Carnovember because my month of Ovo-Lactober is coming to an end.
Yeah, that's right. How was it?
Yeah, so I'm going to be carnivore for the whole of November. It was good. I really enjoyed it. I surprised myself. I thought this is going to suck, and the only way I can do a month of vegetarian is if I've got a month of carnivore coming up straight after it. But to be honest, I'm actually thinking that carnivore might be more difficult than vegetarian's been. Vegetarian's been great. Sometimes I have trouble finding protein. Like, when we're at the resort that Low Carb Gold Coast was at, there wasn't a lot of eggs other than for breakfast, and you can't get things like tofu. Tofu is not that easy to find, and beans and other sources of vegetarian protein always have a lot of carbs, and so I stayed away from all of that. But I ended up having a little bit of fish, so I had some like fatty salmon, which was nice. So that was the only time in the entire month that I followed through on my commitment to have fish as part of Ovo-Lactober. So it's really Ovo-Pesco-Lactober.
Yeah.
But it was only one day, and it was only because I was just feeling like I was in need of I was craving umami flavors, and so I used that as my protein signal. So, but other than that, the good thing about it is it's given me a new constraint on my cooking. And I always find if I have to go through a series of constraints, like when I first went low carb, that was a new constraint on my cooking. And the things I was able to cook expanded dramatically. And it's been the same with vegetarian. I've learnt a lot of new techniques for cooking food that I wouldn't have done if I could just lazily just throw on a bit of meat.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's my week. How was yours?
Oh my God. My week was great. I mean, it was a great week at home. As I told you before, I'm doing this documentary with some subjects or clients or metabolic warriors, as I call them, just tracking them, and they're doing great. I'm really proud of them. We've been making some great food. We started out at their own houses. Cooking in their kitchens, and then we moved it to my house. Just made it more convenient, but they've been just killing it, and I'm very proud of them. But this is Saturday night, and Low Carb Houston just finished, and I'm down here in Houston. I came here because Dr. Nadir Ali hired me to come down and do the live stream and the recording of the conference. Now, this was like all the people that we know from Keto Fest and more, but it was a 2-day event. And it was actually a 2.5-day event. So they started on Thursday night, all day Friday, all day Saturday. Yeah. But get this, Andreas Einfeld started at 6:15 p.m. on Thursday night, and he did a bird's eye view of the low-carb diet for metabolic disease, obesity, cancer, inflammatory disorders, and dementia. And then Gary Taubes took the stage.
He has such a presence, doesn't he?
Gary Taubes. Oh, my God. I just, I'm not worthy.
Yeah, we're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Yeah, I bowed in front of him, and I said, dude, I've never met you in person, but you have, he's influenced everybody.
Yeah. I got to meet him in Zurich, actually, at that event. And that sounds like a similar kind of event. A lot of people there, but Gary Taubes, what a dude.
And he agreed to come back on the show and catch us up on what he sees as the current state of acceptance with low carb. So we're going to be talking to him soon. All right. So I'm going to just nail down a bunch of people that were at this event. David Diamond, Marianne DeMasi.
Yep.
Right. Ivor Cummins, Eric Westman, Jeff Gerber, Amy Berger.
Yep.
Amber O'Hearn.
That sounds like Keto Fest all over again.
Yeah, right. Amber O'Hearn, Peter Ballerstedt.
Yeah, there you go. Dave Feldman.
Jimmy Moore.
There's another one.
And Nadir spoke, of course. Brett Scher.
Right. Well, he wasn't at Keto Fest.
No, he wasn't at Keto Fest, but he was great. And he told stories about talking to patients. And he had a heart patient who just had like a heart attack and a bypass, and his wife was in for diabetes, and he was sitting in the room, and he said, "Can I do this? Sounds great." And he was like, "I don't know." And then after he did the research and he couldn't find any good reason why not, and all sorts of good reasons why, he said yes. And then the guy fixed himself. So
nice.
Angela Poff was there, PhD. She was talking about cancer and metabolism, the Wahlberg effect. She, of course, works with Dom D'Agostino. And
she does in Florida.
Guys, so.
Yep.
Yep. Interestingly, Keith Norris, who's the founder of PaleoFX, was there, and he did a talk. And it was kind of like an inspirational, motivational speaker talk. Like he paced the stage. It was very, very motivational.
Very TED-like.
Great stories. Yeah, very TED-like. Ali Miller talked about the anti-anxiety diet. John Lemansky talked about biohacking the ketogenic diet. He was awesome. Craig Emmerich talked, and Jake Kushner wrapped it up with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah, he's from Baylor College, and he's a professor there. I spent the previous weekend with him on the Gold Coast, and we did an interview with him, and that'll be coming up on the podcast.
Yeah,
he's
great.
He's an awesome guy, yeah.
Yep. So anyway, I got to hang out with all these people and do a live stream. And by the way, if I'm reticent to do this, but I'm really getting into this live streaming stuff. I've got some gear that allows me to set up cameras and do multi-camera shoots from one place with great sounding audio.
And I've got the same gear here in Australia too.
Yeah, that's right. The technology has gotten so good. And Jeff Gerber wants me to come and do the live stream for Low Carb Denver. Well, it's not set in stone yet, but we're talking about it. So that's good stuff. So if you've got an event that you'd like live streamed, you let me know. And we ended up tonight at a great barbecue joint in Houston, and they're man, I sat across from Peter Ballerstedt.
He's a funny guy.
Oh, he's funny. He's hysterical. We all got these big beef ribs, right?
Yeah,
they're like 1.5 pounds each. They're just enormous. They're like Fred Flintstone bones. And he was just like in heaven. He was like, "Oh my God." He's like, "This is the way to eat vegetable." He's like, I'm into eating.
This is the way to eat vegetables through a cow.
That's right. Yeah. And he used very colorful words like, "Oh, that's completely male bovine fecal matter."
Yeah.
Fun. I just had a great week and a great weekend, and So that's enough about me. Let's give away some swag.
Yeah, sure. Every show we pick a lucky winner at random from the members of the 2 Keto Dudes fan club.
Right. And today we're giving away a treasure trove of stuff from vendors we like, all of which you can find at fanclub.2keto.com.
We should also mention a caveat. Most of our vendors can only ship inside the United States.
That's right. However, if we happen to pick someone outside the U.S., we will find something to send you, but it probably won't be the treasure trove. And that is until we can find a more affordable means of distribution.
So who's our winner this week?
Richard, today's winner is John Gonzalez.
Congratulations, John. Let's tell everybody what John's won.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing we're giving away is a 2 Keto Dudes coffee mug with our mugs on it that says, Keep calm and keto on.
And a signed copy of Lies My Doctor Told Me by Dr. Ken Berry online at lies.2keto.com.
Oh my God, Ken Berry was awesome. And a bottle of Stevia Sweet barbecue sauce, developed by a barbecue restaurant owner who plans to change the restaurant industry forever. Only 2 carbs per serving online at steviasweetbbq.com.
And a cheese-making kit from Wine and Whey. That's W-I-N-E and W-H-E-Y. That's Pam Zorn. She gave everybody at Keto Fest a kit so they could make their own fresh mozzarella. That's online at wineway.com. W-I-N-E-A-N-D-W-H-E-Y.com.
And by the way, we have a date for Keto Fest. If you haven't heard, it's July 21st that weekend. So save the date.
The 50th anniversary of the moonwalk.
Right. We're also giving away a 6-ounce cup of beef bone broth concentrate from Birthright Nutrition. Just add water, heat, stir, sip, and enjoy. Jam-packed with good stuff. More at birthrightnutrition.com.
We're also giving away a bottle of Remag Magnesium Solution developed by Dr. Carolyn Dean, along with a copy of her protocol. And the Keto and Magnesium Manifesto. That's online at magmiracle.com.
And we're also giving away a big bottle of fasting drops from Keto Chow. By the way, Chris Bear from Keto Chow is here. And while I was stuck in the control room and couldn't even get up to get coffee, the dude went down to Starbucks and got me a coffee.
He is a really nice guy. Yeah, well, I've been using his fasting drops whenever I fast, and they're wonderful.
Super nice guy. Well, anyway, fasting drops is a well-formulated blend of electrolytes, and you just drop a little in your water, and fasting will be a breeze. Online at fastingdrops.2keto.com.
And 2 bottles of Sated, 1 chocolate, 1 vanilla. Online at sated.2keto.com.
And from Keto & Co., a sampler 6-pack, a bag of brownies, 4 bags of different flavor cauliflower rices, and a bag of flatbread. Online at ketoand.co.
And if you don't want to wait to win some swag, you can buy all sorts of it online at gear.2keto.com.
Absolutely. Go do it now. No, actually, we don't care.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's time for some...
Mail! Yeah, okay, they took a second bite of that, Jerry.
Mail!
Third. What you got, Carl?
Oh, we have too much fun. All right, well, this is in the newbies section of our ketogenic forum. This is from Chris. Chris says, got my Instant Pot and my Mojo this week. I would say I'm officially all in.
Yeah, that sounds all in.
Yep. Well, this week I received my Keto Mojo, which is a ketone and glucose monitor with affordable strips.
Yeah.
And also picked up an Instant Pot. Exciting. My Keto Mojo is actually covered by my FSA, so insurance, right?
Yeah.
During my last doctor visit, I discussed my keto journey with him, and he was very supportive. We have good baselines from back in August, but we will be doing blood panels every 6 months to monitor. No issue with writing up a script for a glucose/ketone monitor, and my claim went through my FSA without a hitch.
Nice.
Basic FSA for reference. My first test I did last night was 0.6. I'm thinking that's ketones.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Going forward, I plan to monitor in the morning a few days a week to see where I'm at. I do plan to monitor the glucose as well. I just want to study it up a bit more to ensure I understand it. This week, I also picked up the 8-quart Instant Pot Ultra.
We should totally get money from Amazon affiliates for this stuff. Why don't we do that?
We're stupid. That's why.
Yeah, I know.
And Chris says it was a buy of the day on Amazon early this week for $120. Right. So we could have gotten $5 from that.
Yeah,
right?
There you go.
Doing some keto country ribs tomorrow and either butter chicken or chicken shawarma later this week. By the way, I ran into the butter chicken lady.
Yeah?
Yeah. She said, hey, I'm your butter chicken recipe. That's
nice.
my recipe.
Yeah.
And I said, thank you Thank you. Everybody thanks you. Yeah. All right. Chris goes on. The cooking aspect is one of the best parts. I love to cook, and this has given me the ability to try some new things and to get a few new books. Loving it so far. Almost 9 weeks in, down 17 of my 50 to 60 pound goal, and I feel great. Keto on.
Well done.
Yeah, that's great. And, it's almost embarrassing how many success stories we're hearing.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. It's like the same story.
Yeah, it's exactly the same story.
Yeah. Well, that's what I got. What do you got?
I've got exactly the same story.
No, really?
No, actually. No, this one's from Sandy. This was an email that Sandy sent to dudes@2ketodudes.com. We both replied to it. But she basically says, thank you for the show. I've recently started listening and I'm about 5 episodes in, but I love your approach and you've taught me more about my recent diagnosis of type 2 diabetes than my doctors or even my own research. You easily put it into terms that I can understand and relate to.
Very good.
Thank you very much, Sandy. We try very hard to do that.
Yep.
Sandy goes on. She says, I want to share my history so you fully understand why I'm a new believer in the keto lifestyle. Well, I was diagnosed on the 25th of September this year. My A1C was 11.2 and my blood pressure was higher than it had ever been. And that same day I started monitoring my sugar and the average was 319 milligrams per deciliter.
Wow.
I got to tell you, Sandy, my HbA1c at the top was also 11.2 and my sugar was up around about 350.
So you guys are metabolic twins.
We're pretty close. Anyway, Sandy goes and she says, my doctor mentioned starting me on insulin that day. And I asked to be given an opportunity to try to make a change without going straight to insulin. So they put me on 5 milligrams of saxagliptin and 4 milligrams of glimepiride, and they scheduled an appointment for a month later and sent me home. Well, fast forward to the 23rd of October, that's almost a month later, and my A1C is already down to 8.6%.
Nice.
And I was told that my blood pressure was the lowest it had been in the last 2 years. And she says, she goes on to say, my average sugar was 113. So she'd gone from 319 to 113 milligrams per deciliter per her glucometer. Her doctor reduced her glimepiride to 2 milligrams because her sugar was consistently low after meals, which is a huge win for her because her ultimate goal was to be medication-free.
Right.
She says, you would think my amazing results would speak for themselves, but unfortunately I need help in explaining the science and justifying why I'm doing a ketogenic diet to part of my treatment team. My doctor was somewhat okay. He just made sure to make me aware of ketoacidosis, which I assured him I'd read up about and I understood. But when I explained to the diabetes educator arm of his team, all they would say is how bad it was and that I would have to talk to the dietitian over and over and over.
Oh, man.
That's also my exact experience as well. I was basically marked down as non-compliant because I wanted to try this ketogenic diet thing.
Right. And you replied to her. I mean, I think I replied to her like, keep calm, keto on. Sounds great. And, good luck. But you gave her a more detailed response. Well,
you also said Gary Fettke and Tim Noakes have both gone through this process, and come out the other side. And so, convince your medical people that, that not all hope is lost. But anyway, my response was that I'm not a doctor and I'm especially not her doctor. But my personal advice is I always follow my doctor's advice. But I have been known to get a second opinion and to fire my doctor if I think they're giving me bad advice and to get a different doctor. But, I will always – because the doctor's job is on a balance of caution to do no harm, and that's the person you want advising you on the journey. They may not be aware of all the information, and so that's the issue about getting a second opinion. But having said that, I can assure Sandy that my HbA1c was once 11.2, so and it's been under 5.3 for 4.5 years.
Yeah,
it's currently 5.1.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. So it is possible for someone with an 11.2 to turn their life around. Not everybody can, but most people can. Now, Sandy, her first diagnosis was 11.2. Her first HbA1c was 11.2. Her second was 8.6 a month later.
Oh, wow.
That's interesting, right? Because HbA1c is a measurement of how glycated your red blood cells have become in their lifetime, and they only live for 3 months.
Right. So her 8.3 was probably colored by the 11.2 and higher before that. So in actuality,
She's on the way down.
It would probably be a lot lower in the next 3 months.
Yeah.
A lot lower.
A lot lower. Her glucose isn't stable. It has dropped from 319 milligrams per deciliter. That was on the 25th of September. On the 23rd of October, it was 113. So, she is just showing the 3-month average, where the first month, her glucose has been 113, and the previous 2 months it had been 320. So, so 1/3 of her blood cells in that second measurement are fresh ones that they've only been alive since she went low carb, and they've never been diabetic. They're 1/3 of her blood cells are non-diabetic blood cells.
So in reality, if you took her average blood glucose over the last week, it would probably average out to in the 5s or 6s.
Yeah, if you did a fructosamine, which is a 1-month average glycation of albumin, that will do a similar kind of thing. So her doctor's not aware of it yet, but she should feel confident that the next time she does a test, an HbA1c test in a month's time, she should be a little over 6 or maybe even a little under 6. And she is well on the way to getting into a normal range. My big concern really is that her drugs, the way those drugs work, that the saxagliptin is a DPP-4 inhibitor, and what that does is it slows the rate at which you clear insulin. So what insulin you make stays around for longer doing what it does. And the sulfonylurea, which is the glimepiride, what it does is it causes her pancreas to make more insulin than it otherwise would.
So wait a minute, both of these drugs are the goal is to make insulin hang around longer so it does a better job of clearing glucose.
And make more of it, right.
And make more of it. So that's the opposite of what we're trying to do with the ketogenic diet.
If you only look at it in the prism of glucose is bad, high glucose is bad, we've got to get glucose down, you want the person to make more insulin. But the reason why glucose is high is because they've been making more insulin for 20 years. They've been making more insulin for 20 years, and their body has become resistant to its own insulin.
And if there isn't any glucose, there doesn't need to be so much insulin.
Right. Neither of those drugs is having as much effect on lowering glucose as just not eating the stuff is.
Yes, that's the best way to lower it, is not put it in there in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. What her doctors really need to know is that even though those drugs probably aren't doing much to help, they could, down the road, and fairly soon, they could cause some harm. Let me try and explain. What used to happen before she changed her diet was that she was gradually becoming more resistant to her own insulin. So she was gradually having to make increasingly more of it to lower glucose. And her problem is that her pancreas couldn't keep up, so it was failing to produce enough, and so it was burning out. And this is why those drugs don't help. They cause her to make more insulin and keep it about for longer, and that was the primary cause of the whole problem. So, the possible harm is not only that it could push her pancreas to beta cell deficiency more quickly, but they could also cause her to have hypoglycemic events where she doesn't have enough glucose because the insulin stayed around longer than the pancreas was expecting, and the pancreas accidentally made more than it was expecting to. And so that could be a problem. So the advice really is when you stop eating sources of glucose, sugar and starch, your liver takes over making the stuff. And that's a normal process that we do when we sleep. We do it when during long, hard winters. We used to get into that state. We don't so much anymore now that we can eat ripe fruit every month of the year, and we have granaries that store a year's worth of grain. We don't have to go through that every winter like we used to. But the important thing is that glucose is controlled not by her poor pancreas making more insulin when it sees more glucose, but it's now being controlled by her liver making it on demand whenever glucose is low.
Right.
So in that state, her pancreas only needs to make just enough to be able to use that much smaller amount of glucose, and those drugs cause her to overproduce insulin, and that could cause an overcorrection. So anyway, that's something that her doctors want to. She wants to let her doctors know, that her glucose is coming in more under control. It's made on demand by her liver, and that. It's probably a good advice for her doctors to consider dialing back on that.
Yeah.
So, and I sent her a couple of links of some papers that we'll put in the show notes. But essentially, if your doctors are interested in this idea of using a low carbohydrate diet to treat diabetes, we're going to link some content from Verta, and I suggest also listening to next week's podcast, which should be Stephen Finney.
Yes. Stephen Finney. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
On Two Keto Dudes, really?
I know.
Our stupid little show?
We are not worthy. We're not.
We're like the cable access TV show of podcasts when it comes to...
Exactly. Anyway, that's my mail.
That's great. So set up this interview that you did with Paul Mason.
Yeah, so Paul and I have known each other for about a year. I first met him at a low-carb conference in Sydney, and he came to speak at Keto Fest that, Carl, you came to, at Keto Fest in Canberra, Australia. He was one of our primary speakers, and he gave 2 excellent presentations. He's also done one online which, if ever anyone has ever told you that you will clog up if you stop eating fibre, your intestines will clog up and you'll be unable to move a bowel movement unless you eat fibre. Go and we're going to link in this show notes. We'll link a copy of that video that Paul did on fibre. But because as it turns out, and we mentioned it in this interview, but as it turns out, everything is exactly the opposite you thought it was.
Of course.
And the same with sunscreen and sun exposure. And Paul is brilliant. We did a really good interview live on stage at Keto Fest, but unfortunately the audio was not the best. So this last week I saw Paul at the Gold Coast, and he's asked me to be the MC for his event, Low Carb Sydney, on the 10th of November, which is coming up soon. So Saturday the 10th of November. So if you're in Sydney or if you're in New South Wales and you want to talk to some low carb healthcare professionals, or you want to meet a keto dude, that's the place to do it.
All right.
So we spoke about all of that and more during this interview.
Very good. Very good.
Hi, welcome back. It's Richard Morris here. I'm in Canberra again, and I'm talking to Dr. Paul Mason, who is in Sydney. And Paul and I have known each other for some time. We first met at a low-carb conference, and Paul came down to speak at Keto Fest in Canberra. Paul, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Richard. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. We actually spent last weekend together up at Gold Coast at the low carb event up there.
We just can't get enough of each other.
No, that's right. What do you think of it?
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it was sold out. It was great lineup of speakers. It was, end-to-end quality talks and good food.
Yeah, that was great. Stephen Finney, how good was he?
Look, that guy is a encyclopedia of biochemistry, just walking around in a blue shirt.
He's a living legend. Always a blue shirt. We actually recorded a podcast with him, and he wore a polo shirt. I almost didn't recognise him.
I'm embarrassed to ask him, but I want to know if that a bit of a Steve Jobs kind of, the turtleneck effect that he's going for.
Yeah, the turtleneck. It's even all of the Verta videos. He's got the blue shirt on, and he wanted to make sure that my podcast was not video, so that he didn't have to wear a blue shirt. So yeah. So now that was a great conference. Now you're planning one coming up very soon, aren't you?
We are in the 10th of November at Sydney University. We're going to be doing the same as we've done at the previous ones. We get a great lineup of speakers, some fresh talks, and hopefully it'll be a cracker of a day.
Yeah, it's all Aussies, isn't it? So I'm going to MC this event, which is going to be fun.
Look, I think that's going to be one of the big attractions there, Richard. And not only are you going to MC it, but we've got a couple of patients who are coming in that you're going to be interviewing as well.
Yeah, a live interview that'll go into the podcast, a live interview from the stage. So where can people get tickets for this event?
So this is at Eventbrite, but if you go to the lowcarbdownunder.com.au website, or if you just type low carb Sydney November into Google, the links will pop straight up.
I'll tell you a secret. It's actually the day of my chemistry finals for first year chemistry at ANU. I had to get them to give me an earlier date, so I'm sitting that exam all by myself.
Now that I did not know, so kudos to you for the commitment to be there.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have missed this for the world. It's awesome. And my chemistry lecture is really good. They moved an exam for me in first semester so that I could go to that Zurich conference, where I met Gary Tabbs for the first time and did an interview with Catherine Crofts and Sarah Hallberg. So, they're very good at looking after me.
Well, they've probably got a form with your name on it now.
that guy.
So you didn't even ask for a doctor's letter, I notice.
No, well, that's true. I know a few doctors. I'm sure I can get one if I need to. So tell me more about this event. You're going to speak at the event?
Yeah, so I'll be doing a couple of talks there. So there's a couple of new topics which I've been sort of researching in the background for a couple of years now, and I think it's about time that we released them. So one of them is on vitamin D.
Oh, nice.
There's a huge misunderstanding on the role of vitamin D, even within the low-carb community. And I don't know whether I want to give away all the secrets now, but essentially vitamin D is what we call a surrogate marker for something else which actually gives the actual real health benefits.
Oh, interesting.
And that's so when you're exposed to sunshine naturally, you get other chemicals in addition to vitamin D, which give a lot of the health benefits. And that's why when you replace vitamin D with a tablet, you're not getting the full spectrum of benefit.
Right. So we naturally make vitamin D in this top layer of our skin. And
on exposure to UVB rays.
Right. And so from cholesterol, right?
It is, yeah. It's a downstream metabolite of cholesterol.
Yeah, so you could almost reduce your circulating cholesterol a little bit by going out in the sun sort of for 5 minutes every day and just getting a little bit.
Indeed you could.
Yeah.
Indeed you could. And if reducing cholesterol was a goal...
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
But I mean, there's another side of the equation as well. And when it comes to vitamin D, because that necessitates sun exposure. And there's some very interesting data on all-cause mortality and exposure to the sun, and even to the extent of some studies have looked at skin cancer incidence of all-cause mortality. And just let me say, some of the findings are very surprising.
Oh, interesting. So I know that somebody did a study once that included the postcode. The data included the mortality rates and their postcode. I think this was in the UK. And you could actually find a correlation between where somebody lived and cardiovascular disease rates. And the theory was that vitamin D was involved. The further north you went, the less UVB exposure you got. The greater the chance of cardiovascular disease.
And that's the role of vitamin D as a surrogate marker, because it tracks very well to sun exposure, but it's not necessarily what's giving us the benefit.
Right.
And I'm not familiar with that study you talk about, but the World Health Organization has published data on all-cause mortality across seasons. And it's very interesting. They give you 3 lines, one for the northern hemisphere, one for the southern hemisphere, and one for equatorial region.
Right.
And what you notice is that in the northern hemisphere, you see they have a peak in all-cause mortality over the January-February period of time, compared to the southern hemisphere where we see it in the July-August region. So they're graphs that are sort of inverse of each other, and the equatorial region is a relatively flat line throughout the whole year.
Wow.
So, and obviously, this is worldwide data. It's quite convincing that there's something happening with the seasons.
Yeah.
And I think it's reasonable to hypothesize that it is actually sun exposure.
Yeah, well, that would certainly be a good chance. Another thing could be, the temperature and flu season and influenza in the elderly is quite.
Yeah, that's certainly true. There's a lot of confounders there. That in itself isn't evidence, but some of the other things certainly. There is mechanistic evidence that you can point at in terms of blood pressure going up and down.
Ooh, yeah.
And even things like mitochondrial efficiency, which is something I might touch on in the lecture as well.
Yeah.
Which is basically, for the electron transport chain, it's getting a little bit
nerdy
geeky here.
Yeah, that's okay. We can go. We'd love to go there.
Basically, some electrons are used usefully, and some electrons are wasted.
Right.
And you actually waste less electrons after you have exposure to a certain kind of sun.
Isn't that fascinating?
And then I guess there's one more, or there's a couple more things that you can actually reduce your chance of sunburn. So obviously if people are saying, well, do I need sun exposure? And that's a very controversial thing in Australia.
In Australia, because, definitely, yeah.
Since the 1980s, we've had the Slip, Slop, Slap campaign and all of these things.
This is an anti-cancer campaign to slip on a T-shirt and slop on sunscreen and slap on a hat.
And that's been very effective at reducing sun exposure, but it's basically, demonized all sun exposure, and I don't think the full health implications of that have been explored.
Yeah.
And there's actually a difference in the amount of UVA and UVB exposure. They're the two types of UV radiation that penetrate the atmosphere down to ground level, depending on the time of day. So you can actually, theoretically reduce your exposure to the DNA damaging UVB radiation simply by, timing your sun exposure.
Right.
And then there's one more thing to make this message a little bit more complex is the omega-3 index, which is how much of the good omega-3 fats you have within your body.
Right.
And there's been interventional studies where they've actually exposed people to UV radiation and measured the time it takes for their skin to burn. That's called the minimal erythemal dose.
Right.
And it's actually been shown that you can double the time it takes for your skin to burn just by increasing the omega-3 index.
So more omega-3s, less omega-6s?
More omega-3s, less omega-6s means less sunburn, less damage to your skin.
Isn't that fascinating? Because I have, typical British-Irish skin. I've had some really bad burns in my life, bad sunburns. I grew up in Queensland, so, that sunburn is almost a rite of passage.
That demographic doesn't belong there.
Yeah, no, this is true. But the interesting thing is, ever since I've been ketogenic, in the last 4.5 years, I don't think I've ever had a sunburn at all.
That is supported by the literature. That's supported by experimental evidence.
And so that's why. So we're basically on a ketogenic diet. We have a lot less seed oils, and we're cooking at home, and we're trying to prioritize omega-3 in our diet so that instead of a 60-to-1 ratio of 6-to-3, we've got more of a
especially if we're having grass-fed produce. So if we have a look at the fatty acid analysis of beef, for instance, there's a huge difference in grain-fed and grass-fed beef. It could be, more than 3% of the total fatty acids are omega-3 in grass-fed beef.
Yeah.
For grain-fed beef, it can be as low as 0.
Yeah. We had Peter Ballestead, Dr. Peter Ballestead on, and he said, grass-fed is better than grain-fed beef. Grass-finished is also better than grain-finished beef. But he said, if you're really trying to prioritize omega-3, just eat salmon. He said, it's just the amount of polyunsaturated fats in a slice of beef is a lot less.
Except a lot of our salmon now is actually farmed, and they're actually fed grains, and there's a substantial drop in the omega-3 in farm salmon compared to wild-caught salmon. Yeah. And this obviously raises a lot of issues about sustainability of food supply, but unfortunately, modern agriculture and farming techniques are altering our food supply in ways that
that's a good
we
point.
Can't predict.
I think for salmon, we really need to farm algae first, and then from the algae farm krill, and then from the krill farm salmon.
And if it was fed algae, that would be wonderful. That's actually the substrate which is used to convert into omega-3s.
Right. Yeah. Well, algae makes all of the omega-3s. Yeah. In the.
Yeah. So if fish are feeding algae, then fantastic. They have the capacity to generate omega-3.
Well, we should be able to grow algae. That shouldn't be too difficult. We should be able to grow it from wheat,
Well, look, that's actually a conversation for another day, but I am actually aware of some really interesting work that's being done on cleaning up water bodies at the moment, and the products that are coming out of it. It actually could be one, you can clean up algal blooms in water bodies, and number 2, you might actually be left with a very useful material at the end of it.
Yeah. Genius. So I understand you wrote a book on sports medicine. Is this true? A textbook?
Look, I was lucky enough to be asked to write a chapter in a sports medicine textbook. It's one of the most prominent sports medicine textbooks in the world. It was founded by Dr. Peter Bruckner and Dr. Karim Khan, two strong advocates of the low-carb diet.
Yeah, Peter Bruckner's been on our show a couple of times. Yeah, he's awesome.
Peter's a bit of a mentor of mine. He's been very gracious with his time that he spent with me and advice that he spent with me over the last few years, because I'm actually a sports and exercise medicine physician.
Right.
And he was actually one of the founding members of that college a couple of years ago.
Mm.
So he's now sort of towards the end of his career, and I'm sort of nearer the start. But yeah, when he asked me to write this chapter, he said, Paul, look, I want you to write a balanced chapter on nutrition and health, respecting both viewpoints.
Right.
And I said, sure, Peter.
Mm-hmm.
I was fully intending to do that. And then I was sitting down, I was writing, and I was looking at the literature, and I'm thinking, there's just no way that I can write a viewpoint that I guess is quote-unquote respectful for the low-fat camp if I'm being honest to the literature.
Right.
There's just no support. So I went back to Peter and I said, look, Peter, I'm trying to write a balanced viewpoint, but the simple fact is there's no evidence to support it. And he said, sure. You just write what write what the evidence says.
Yeah.
So it's actually, it is actually well balanced in terms of, and it's been through an editorial process. There's over 300 references to it.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
It's pretty comprehensive, but I think the simple fact is when people read it and they see the weight of evidence in support of reduced carbohydrate diets, I really don't think there can be any scientific argument. And I'm actually quite excited to see when it gets published. It's actually it's been to the editors. It's going to be published by McGraw-Hill. It's finished all the final proofs, so the end product is there. We're just waiting for it to be printed.
Yeah, I'm looking actually at a proof of it now, and it's fairly comprehensive. It's actually a really great gift to you to be able to go back into the literature and just shore up, and understand exactly where your biases come from. Peter saying to you, do it as balanced as you can, and you doing the research and finding out that the literature doesn't support that. You've come away from that with a fascinating understanding of the literature.
Well, there was a couple of things that really surprised me. So I was even clinging to some old biases myself.
Okay.
Two leap out at me. The first one is fibre, and the second one is monounsaturated fats. And I mean, they had never really entered my radar as something to research, but because we have sections on them, we have sections on every macronutrient, and I went into the literature and I was absolutely astonished to find there's no experimental evidence supporting the use of fibre for the symptoms of constipation. And also the evidence that monounsaturated fats are uniquely beneficial for cardiovascular disease is simply not there. And, we basically tell people to go and swim in olive oil.
Yeah, pretty much.
A la Mediterranean diet. Mm-hmm. And the evidence is just not there. And I think they were two of the most interesting things that I learned when I was writing the book.
Yeah, I like this about fibre. You did a really good presentation at one of the Sydney low carb events, and we'll link to that in the show notes, where you actually showed that there was a study that was looking into fibre and correlating that with
symptoms of constipation.
Symptoms of constipation, yeah.
So probably one of the big things about fibre that's misunderstood is there's a lot of research that uses transit time and fecal bulk as their outcome measures. Mm-hmm. And they use them as surrogate measures or surrogate markers for benefits within constipation.
Right.
So the idea is that if something moves a little bit quicker through your gastrointestinal tract, or if what comes out the other end is a little bit bigger, then that must be beneficial for the patient. Now, here's the thing. I've never once had a patient come to me and say, you know what, I would just like you to speed up my transit time by about, maybe 16 or 18 hours if you could.
Right.
And could you please just increase the size of my fecal matter?
No, I want more and I want it faster.
Exactly. Nobody ever says that.
Yeah.
I want it a bit bigger and I'd like it a bit quicker. Now, what they complain about, they say I'm bloated. They say I can't defecate. I strain. There's bleeding. It hurts.
Yeah.
They're the symptoms of constipation. And when we actually have a look at the evidence on the symptoms of constipation, there's never been not one randomized control trial performed on it. So the best trial that I found was the one I presented. It was an experimental design, but it wasn't a true randomized control trial. But the results of that were astonishing. It found that when fibre was completely eliminated from the diet, that it led to complete resolution of 6 of the symptoms, all 6 of the symptoms of constipation which people complain about. And the statistical significance was something in the order of a p-value of 0.001.
That's fascinating. So we normally think that the more fibre you have, the more regular you're going to be.
I know, and I suppose one of the most interesting points from my talk, the slide that most people like, is when I present the analogy of a traffic jam. And if we think about constipation as being a problem of passing something through a small hole, think of it like a traffic jam, then why would we conclude that making that something bigger would help it pass through that small hole? And that's just like
having more traffic,
That's like adding cars to a traffic jam and thinking it'll help it to clear. I mean, clearly, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that is absolutely crazy. So the finding from this study was essentially that if you want to reduce constipation, reduce fibre in your diet.
Exactly, and even to the point of eliminate fibre from the diet.
Yeah. I heard an interesting theory by Professor Finney this last weekend. I've heard him say this before, but he fleshed it out in full detail, that the idea that that one of the reasons why fibre is indicated for is that our gut bacteria convert that fibre. We can't digest it, so it makes its way all the way down to the large intestine, and then our bacteria turn that into short-chain fatty acids, particularly butyric acid. And butyric acid turns out to be a very good, in fact, the preferred source of energy for the cells of our gut. And in fact, when people have a colostomy, they have a diversion where part of the gut's just not used, and they have it like a colostomy bag, and the gut below that, the large intestine below that, isn't used. People have problems with it dying off, and one of the ways to keep it alive is to stick butyrate in the other end.
Well, here's a little bit more nuance to that, is that the butyrate actually gets converted into ketones within the colonocyte.
Yes.
So the cells that actually line the colon, they actually end up using the short-chain fatty acid as energy in the form of ketones. Now, one of the big problems with short-chain fatty acid production is that the delivery of the energy to the cells that line the colon is very patchy. So a lot of these are produced very early in the colon, and their rate of absorption is incredibly rapid, so they usually don't pass through to the cells lining the distal part of the colon. And that's really important because some of the inflammatory bowel diseases actually will affect the distal colon more. And here's the thing. If you get benefit from providing a source of ketones to the colonocytes, and you can get a patchy delivery of ketones as energy via short-chain fatty acids, via fibre, how does that compare to a systemic source of ketones
getting in the blood supply
that's going to every colonocyte throughout the whole length of the gastrointestinal tract that you see in somebody who's in nutritional ketosis?
Exactly. And so maybe it could well be that fibre is necessary when you're on a high-sugar diet because you're not making your own ketones.
Fibre would be beneficial if you're not in ketosis, but only beneficial to some populations of cells within the colon. And if that happens to be part of the colon that's inflamed in you, then it's certainly logical that you'd get some benefit, but it doesn't compare to the benefits you get from being in nutritional ketosis.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah, so I guess one of the other topics to take a diversion back to the conference coming up on the 10th is I'm going to be looking at inflammation and how that relates to weight loss or difficulty in losing weight.
Fascinating.
And what it comes down to, and it relates very tightly to iron levels within the body. Now, I'm sure a lot of people, and I'm sure you're familiar with the measurement of ferritin, which we use to see whether there's enough iron in the body. Now, here's the problem. Ferritin represents storage of iron, but it doesn't necessarily represent iron that's available for use.
Right.
So when the body's inflamed, in a state of inflammation, the body has evolved mechanisms where it locks the iron up, basically sequesters it, because it doesn't know the difference between inflammation and an infection. So if there's an infection in the body, the germs, the bacteria, they actually benefit from having a ready supply of iron. So it makes a lot of sense to put the iron under lock and key for a period of time so it doesn't help the bacteria proliferate.
Right.
But the trouble is, if you're chronically inflamed, and we know that obesity is a state of chronic inflammation, then you ingest iron and your body just stuffs it into these ferritin molecules, but it's not able to be used. So you end up with basically starvation in a land of plenty. There's a lot of iron there, but it's not able to be utilized. And the problem that this causes is that within the cytochrome C pathways, these pathways that need iron to function properly, they're involved in energy metabolism.
Sure.
And if you don't have enough iron available, you reduce your energy expenditure. And if we go back to the first law of thermodynamics, to lose weight, you need to burn more energy than you're taking in. And we're dealing with the ketogenic diet with the stuff that's coming in, but this side of it is impairing the energy expenditure. So chronic inflammation actually does contribute to, issues with weight loss. And I find in a lot of my patients, if they have chronic inflammation, sometimes we need to go hunting for the cause. Sometimes it might be a parasitic infection in the gut. There could be almost anything. And when you treat the cause of inflammation and you have the inflammation normalize, magically the weight loss starts to happen again.
That's fascinating. This whole idea of being starving in a land of plenty, it's very similar to the paradox of a fat man who is hungry all the time and has no energy to do anything.
It's near identical.
Yeah, and so this is just yet another example of how we can be overfed and under-delivered with energy.
Absolutely. And I think the problem here is that you end up with a feed-forward cycle.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're increasing your body weight, you're increasing your inflammation. Because we know that the fat cells, the adipocytes, they actually secrete a cytokine called IL-6.
Yep.
And IL-6 is known to upregulate C-reactive protein, which is one of the best markers for inflammation we've got. So you could almost end up in a cycle there, and some people feel that they're trapped on this treadmill, and often we just need to identify what's causing the problem and try and break that cycle.
So beta-hydroxybutyrate in circulation has been shown to reduce inflammation mechanistically.
Absolutely.
So your theory would be that you have high ferritin levels because your iron's being sequestered away from, in theory, bacteria that's causing the inflammation. But your inflammation is systemic. It's not caused by the infection, yeah.
Yes. Well, the body treats it like it's bacteria. It's not necessarily bacteria, but the defense mechanism of the body, they don't really distinguish between what's inflammation. They assume that because inflammation is not a natural state that we've evolved to be in, the body treats any inflammation like infection.
And so when you go on a ketogenic diet, what happens is you treat the inflammation, your ferritin levels go down because now your body is releasing iron to be used because it knows that there's not bacteria around causing an infection.
Exactly.
And so it's really mistaking inflammation for infection.
Exactly.
Wow.
And we've actually identified the mechanisms by which it works. There's a protein called hepcidin, which actually regulates a channel called ferroportin. And ferroportin is the doorway which iron actually can get in and out.
Hence the name, yep.
Yeah, so it's, the mechanisms are quite there. I'm sort of surprised that more people haven't made a big deal about this in the past.
Well, they will after your presentation at Low Carb Sydney. So your last one on fibre has been shared all over the place. So I bet this will be as well. So if anybody wants to see some Australian doctors talking about low carb research, I think my cardiologist is going to be there as well, I believe.
Your cardiologist is going to be presenting, I believe.
Excellent.
Dr. Jason Kaplan.
Excellent. So, so that's going to be awesome. So, I'm really looking forward to this event. I may be a little bit distracted because I'll have just come from a chemistry final the day before, but that's my last exam for the semester.
Now, is it multiple choice?
No, there are short questions. I've got to do mechanisms.
Oh dear! So you can't even choose C.
The Warren method, the Shane Warne method. No, I can't. So no, I'm looking good for the chemistry final. Actually, it's a biology final. I'm a bit worried about, but next year I get into actual biochemistry. All I needed to do this year was to show that I had enough biology and enough chemistry to be able to do second and third year biochem subjects. So that's it's all good.
Well, I'm excited to see where this goes for you. I mean, I really don't know what's on your pathway ahead, but I'm damn sure it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to your presentation and the other presentations at the conference. Again, that's on Saturday, November 10th. Well, Paul, thank you very much. This has been a wonderful chat. I look forward to seeing you very soon at the conference.
Richard, thanks again for having me on your podcast. It's always a pleasure chatting to you. I always learn something new.
Thanks, mate. Bye.
See you later.
Heard you say you're due for a little.
Okay, Carl, so that was the interview. What did you think?
That was great. I mean, the rapport you guys have is obvious. You know, you've known each other a long time, and he's brilliant. It's just amazing to me, all the ridiculously smart people that I've personally been exposed to over the last 2.5 years. When I started, I was so stupid about keto and about low carb, and
we all were.
Watching all these videos and the resources that you gave me and the people that we've met over the last few years is just astounding. And it just makes me very grateful to be able to know these people and to just to listen to them talk and to learn from them.
And in most cases, these people don't have books. They don't have a barrier to push. They're just trying to get information out because their job is healing patients and they can't get to enough patients. The universe is making diabetics faster than people like Paul can treat them. And so they're trying to get information out on the internet. So
I can reflect a few personal experiences from some of the things that you guys talked about, like omega-3 and sunburn.
Yeah,
there was a time, and I was badly deranged at the time when I went out to Block Island. And Block Island, if you live in the Northeast or in the Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York area, is this island that you can only get to by ferry. And it's a summertime, how shall we say? It's like a destination for people who just want to party.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. It's like you go there and there's quaint shops during the day, but it's all bars and hopping nightlife. So I got a chance to play with a band out there, and it was a weekend thing.
Yeah.
And you go out for the whole weekend. They put you up, you play for 2 nights, and, they feed you and all that stuff. But during the day on Saturday, it's all beach, right? And so I went out on the beach, and because I felt immortal, I didn't wear any sunscreen, and I was pretty much out, and I turned into a lobster.
Of course you did.
Burn.
I've done it myself too. Yeah.
Well, as you said with Paul, you are in sunburn country.
Yeah.
In Australia.
Queensland especially, yeah.
Right. You go to the store for eggs and you get a sunburn, right?
Yes, that's true.
So fast forward to the last time that I was in the sun, which was when I was down at Alan Meisner's place in Pensacola Beach, Florida. And I spent an afternoon on the beach body surfing and stuff, and just there was nothing. I mean, now granted, I wasn't out there all day, but...
Yeah, but Florida is more equatorial than Block Island.
It is.
Yeah, you should have had more sunburn in Florida. You would have thought.
I should have had more sunburn.
You would have thought.
I did not have sunburn.
Yeah.
And I remember Ken Berry talking about in his book, Lies My Doctor Told Me, he talked about, the whole idea of putting sunblock on your body is kind of ridiculous. Just don't be in the sun so long that you burn.
Yeah.
Because you need the vitamin D. We as people, as humans, we spent hours and hours and hours in the sun.
Yeah. Naked.
What happened? Yeah, naked mostly, right? With a loincloth.
Yes. Well, I mean...
the Blue Lagoon loincloth.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You might have.
Not me. Are you kidding me? I was fully clothed, man.
We both have some Scandinavian heritage and some English and Irish heritage. And, one of the reasons why paler people live further north is because of this vitamin D. We need to be able to convert enough of cholesterol on the surface of our skin into vitamin D. And as Paul actually mentioned, and he'll be talking in his presentation at Low Carb Sydney, it's some of the commensurate effects of that are what really cause the advantages. But anyway, it's certainly true that since I've been keto, I haven't had a really bad sunburn. I think Queenslanders still should slip, slop, slap, but I would suggest going outside for just 10 minutes in the morning, get your eyes acclimated to the fact that it's daytime, and just get a little bit of sun on your skin before you put sunscreen on, because your body needs to be able to get some sun exposure to be able to convert cholesterol into vitamin D.
But also he said that if you've been keto for a while and haven't been out in the sun, you should maybe test your limits, like go out in the sun without a shirt or, with a top or whatever, and just see what happens. I mean, now the problem with sunburn, of course, is that it doesn't show up until after it's too late, right?
Yeah, true.
But I got a feeling that I could spend 4 or 5 hours out in the sun now and not burn.
Yeah. If in the north of America, you probably could.
Yeah, North America, yeah. And the other thing is that I can totally relate to what Paul said about fiber.
Yeah. And
my experiences confirm this.
Mm-hmm.
I had some constipation for a while, and a friend of ours, advised me that maybe fiber was the problem, and it's kind of strange, but I thought that taking my 3 tablespoons of Metamucil or psyllium husk fiber in water every morning was necessary in order for me to be regular, but it wasn't the case. And this person just encouraged me to give it up altogether. And I did. And the first couple of days was hard.
Your body's saying, wait a minute, I thought we were going to have some fiber here.
Right. And after that, it was smooth sailing.
Yeah. Nice. I had exactly the same experience. So I used to take a tablespoon of psyllium husk in like a milkshake thing, like a whey protein milkshake at night, because I thought I was not getting enough protein. Secondly, I thought I wasn't getting enough fiber. And, we're told, and, that's logical when you're on a low carb high fat diet. You think, well, how am I going to get my fiber? How am I going to get my necessary fiber in? Well, it turns out that fiber is not necessary for regularity. We just think it is. The first couple of days, I thought, oh no, I've done something really stupid. And
you just basically said exactly what I did. I mean, it's a common experience, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I kind of think that all these people who would think, oh, you're going to get prostate cancer and colon cancer because you don't have enough fiber. Well, yeah, but I'm also not gumming it up with simple carbohydrates, with flours and sugars and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, that's right. So
right?
We're going to speak actually next week with Stephen Finney about some things related to this, because part of the reasons we think we need fiber is because we think fiber feeds our lower gut bacteria to produce short-chain fatty acids, and Stephen Finney's got a theory on that as well. So,
I can't wait. I can't wait for that.
All this talk about delicious fiber has me hungry.
Sure it does. Well, let's talk about some
recipes! What you got, Carl?
Well, my neighbors in the Hilton, Houston, Clear Lake are surely not going to be knocking on the walls very soon, because I just made a whole bunch of noise. Okay. I am going to give you a Franklin family Christmas morning favorite recipe. This is a recipe that my mother and her grandmother, etc., passed down to my brother and I growing up in Connecticut. And this is from the Swedish side of the family. It's creamed eggs. Now, we traditionally did this on toast. So we would have wheat toast, and we would make these eggs, and then you put them on top. And this was Christmas morning. But you do not have to have toast. But if you're going to have toast, you should probably use the awesome buns from Fox Hill Kitchens, which you can get at bread.2keto.com. Yes, we actually do have an affiliate link. You will get
it's
50
the only
cents.
one we have, I think. But we love Julie's bread. She's come to 2 of our Keto Fests. She is awesome, so it's the least we can do.
She's the one that made the grilled cheese sandwiches at Keto Fest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she begged us to have an affiliate link, so we said, okay, we'll do it.
Sure. So bread.2keto.com, pass it out. So she makes these buns, and they're made with yeast. So they're almond flour, coconut flour, and yeast. And the idea is that the yeast eats the residual sugar from the coconut flour and the almond flour, as little as it is, and makes bubbles. Yep. And this is the secret behind Fox Hill Kitchen's bread. So you get the buns, you cut them in half, and toast them well done. All right. So the eggs, it's very simple. Now, you and I have both made an anglaise for ice cream, right?
Yep.
And an anglaise is egg yolks and cream in a double boiler, and you keep stirring until just the nappe stage where it coats the back of a spoon.
Yep.
But this is similar, but you're going to use the whole egg. You're going to use 8 eggs and scramble them well and put them in a double boiler, and you're only going to use a cup of heavy cream.
So when you say scrambled, you mean mix them well?
Mixed well, yes, that's what I mean.
They're not scrambled eggs yet. They're not cooked yet.
I don't mean what you eat, scrambled eggs. Right, yes, okay. So they are scrambled but not cooked yet.
Yeah, mixed. Yeah.
Yeah. So you cook them in a double boiler, which is a shallow pot of boiling water with a bigger pot on top of it. And so that pot is usually a glass bowl or a
ceramic or something,
metal bowl or something, ceramic, whatever. So you put your 8 eggs and your cup of heavy cream in there, maybe a pinch of salt, and herbs to taste. So the thing about eggs is that you can use whatever herbs you have that are fresh. So I love to use herb de Provence.
That's a mix, isn't it? So what's in that?
So the herbs in herb de Provence are typically savory: marjoram, rosemary, thyme, oregano, sometimes lavender.
Wow.
If it's in North America, it's a really good blend. So it's a very kind of a flowery, nice blend, and it's great with eggs. But you can also use dill, chives, chervil, tarragon. I mean, take your pick.
Yeah.
Any fresh herb is going to be great in scrambled eggs, really.
Yep.
All right. So you're going to bring that to a boil, so over high heat, and you're going to whisk it like crazy and whisk and whisk and whisk and whisk. Keep whisking until just before it turns into scrambled eggs.
Right.
And I know that's hard to gauge.
Just before the curds set. Yeah, so the curds are just starting to want to form. They're probably stringy curds, and they're not quite set up, and that's when you stop.
Right. I would say you start to pay attention when it starts to get thick and it's a little more difficult to stir.
Yeah. Do you have a cold pot with some ice in it that you're going to put the double boiler into to stop it quickly?
Yes, Richard, that is an excellent point. Obviously, you are a chef.
No, I'm not. I'm a computer programmer. I thought we already established that.
Well, seriously, that's a very chefy move. So what you do is you get a bigger pot with some ice water in it, and you put that next to the stove. And when you've got the perfect consistency for your eggs, which is, they're thickening but not scrambled, you take that bowl off the heat and you dump it in that bowl, and the ice water sort of stops the cooking process immediately. That's what you want to do. Yeah. But it's not going to turn it into ice cream, obviously. It's just going to cool it off.
Yeah. It's just going to stop it cooking, yeah.
Now you take your if you have toast, if you have this toasted Julie bread, we call it, you put a little butter on that, and you just put the eggs on top, and we put a little salt and cayenne pepper on top.
Nice.
And that's it. You eat it with a knife and fork. Now, if you're keto, you don't even want to do any kind of bread whatsoever. You just put that on your plate and maybe some shredded cheese over that, like some cheddar or some smoked Gouda.
Yeah.
And It's delicious. Creamed eggs.
Yeah, one thing you could do with that is you could actually use a shredded Gouda to make like a donut shape on your plate and then put the eggs into the middle of that, and will all hold together, but it'll be like a sticky, cheesy mess at the bottom. So that's a little chefy trick for plating.
That is the chefy trick. And not only that,
I'm not a chef.
Well, you're chefy. But not only that, but because the cheese is on the bottom, it melts.
Yes.
More than if it's just sprinkled on the top.
That's right.
It's got two surfaces of heat. Yeah. I like
there
it.
you go. Well,
I like it. That's what I got. Creamed eggs a la Franklin family. What do you got?
Yeah, my recipe this week is going to be a coconut curry, and it's like a play on a recipe I did 2 weeks ago, which was a vegetable stir fry. All of these recipes are going to be very similar. And you might remember at the first Keto Fest, I did one recipe that made 6 different meals. I did the pulled beef, and then it made 6 different meals. Well, this is kind of what I'm doing on a vegetarian side.
And you call yourself not a chef.
Chefy. There's a difference.
You are chefy. Yeah.
I'm chefy. What you do is you start off with a very similar thing. You start off with some ghee in a pan. You want the ghee to melt. You then want to put some chopped, diced shallots, onion shallots. And for a 2-person meal, you probably only need half a shallot, or you can go to a full one. They're not really carby. Mm-hmm. And you want to get that shallot to be see-through. So once the shallot has gone see-through, you want to add to it some chopped bell peppers. So this is very similar. You see, I'm going the same route as I went with the stir fry. I'm going to put very similar ingredients in, but the difference here is I'm going to put a tablespoon of curry paste, and this is a green curry paste. This is a Thai green curry paste, but you can use a red curry paste. When you go to the store, you get these in jars. Get all of the curry pastes in front of you on a shelf, lined up with the nutritional panel facing you, and look for the ones that have the lowest carbohydrate. You don't care about how much oil they have in them, because you can add more oil or not. What you don't want to be doing is you don't want to be adding sugars and starches to your meal.
Yeah. Look at the ingredients, too.
And look at the ingredients as well. It doesn't really matter if palm sugar is like the 50th ingredient, but if it's a second ingredient, you don't want to use any of that. So, so basically, you're going to use just about a tablespoon of this into a meal. Most meals, when you cook with these things, you probably use 3 or 4 tablespoons. Only use 1 tablespoon, because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be developing the flavour by cooking it rather than and the other thing is by putting it in early, when the onions have just started to go translucent, you're just starting to sweat off the peppers, you put the curry paste in then in that melted butter, and it's going to cook, and the flavour will be 10 times greater than if you put a bit of curry paste in at the end of the recipe.
And what you're doing here is you're building these layers of flavor.
That's right.
That's exactly
yeah. So the next step is you're going to chop up some mushrooms, and you're going to add some mushrooms to that. And now remember that you probably want your extractor fan on, or you want to have somebody with a broomstick standing under your smoke detectors, because as soon as your curry paste hits the butter, it's going to start smoking. So that's what it's supposed to do.
I had to take the battery out of the kitchen smoke detector
You're not
in my
supposed
house.
to do that. Can you still get
it's in the wrong place. Sorry, but I smoke too much food.
Yeah. Yeah, you need an industrial strength extractor.
Or I need, what I need? I need an Alexa interface to Alexa, shut that thing off.
Yeah, that's true. Alexa, I'm cooking. So the next step, we've got some shallots, we've got some red peppers, we've got the curry paste, we've got some mushrooms. Chop up a stick of celery and throw that in there. And what'll happen with the celery is the water will come out of it, because you essentially have oil from the butter or the ghee in the bottom. The celery is going to hit that oil, and steam will fly off. And so while that steam is coming off, and what's going to happen is the celery is going to break down, and then it's going to be the flavour of celery added to the meal. But while that steam is coming off, outgassing from the celery, throw in a handful of spinach leaves and put the top on. And what that's going to do is it's going to wilt the spinach leaves with the steam coming off the celery. And you're going to do that for about a minute, and then at the end, you're going to turn off the heat and put in some coconut cream.
Now, let's define coconut cream because
it's not creamed coconut.
Yeah, I have seen creamed coconut, which has sugar in it, right?
Yeah, that's coconut sugar. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is coconut cream. So the way that coconut cream is made is you take a fresh young coconut and you scrape out the inner layer of the insides and you pulverize it, and then you push it through a filter, and what's left is coconut milk. If you let that coconut milk sit, all the fat rises to the top and you scoop it off, and that's coconut cream. So that's what I'm talking about. In Australia, you can buy coconut milk and coconut cream in cans very easily. I found in New London, Connecticut, I found it very difficult. I ended up buying creamed coconut by mistake, but it was coconut cream that we wanted. But it is available. Go to a Latin store in New London, Connecticut, or you can find these things if you look for them. That's essentially the recipe. What's going to happen is that all of the stuff at the bottom underneath the spinach has turned into like a brown, tasty mixture. And when the coconut cream hits that, the coconut cream will go from white to sort of like almost a greeny yellow color. And that plus the spinach, and then you just eat that with egg noodles like I made last week. And that's a vegetarian meal. I told you I'm enjoying cooking vegetarian.
This is great. This is great. And I can taste it with your description. But so what if you wanted to add a meat to that if you're eating meat?
Yep.
Where in the process would you add that, and what would you add to it?
Okay, so I will add tofu to that meal, and I will use a puffed tofu like I did in the meal two meals ago, and I will cook that in a separate pan with ghee and puff it all up. And so I would suggest with meat, I would cook meat in a separate pan. I would add the meat to your coconut curry sort of at the end, about the same time as you add the coconut to it. So the meat has its own flavour, but it's now being used as a carrier, like a vessel to carry the coconut flavour to you. So you end up with the two flavours. You chew down in, you get the meat flavour, but you also get the coconut curry flavour. But I would suggest also adding some stock to the pan after you've cooked the meat. There'll be fond on the bottom of the pan. Don't put that pan in the dishwasher. While the pan is still hot, hit it with stock or brandy or red wine. Probably not red wine with this meal. Probably not brandy with this meal. I'd use like a vegetarian, like a mushroom stock or a veal stock. And you only need like a tablespoon of the stuff, and it's only just to pull all that nice sticky stuff off the bottom of the pan. And then I'd toss that in the coconut milk and stir it around, and that'll sort of give the coconut milk just the essence of the meat flavour.
I'm thinking chicken thighs might be a good meal.
Chicken thighs would be awesome. Baked chicken thighs in the oven. Yes, and then toss them in the coconut curry at the top.
You realize it's only 2 days to Carnovember for you.
Yeah, but at Carnovember I can't eat any plants, so I can't eat what I really want to eat until December. Eat whatever you want December. So, but I'm making one exception to my rule. I am going to have one non-animal product, and that will be mushrooms. Mushrooms technically are not plants, so I will have some mushrooms in.
Everybody's got some exception to the rule that's based on a technicality, right? You're allowed yours. I'm
going to have eggs, so I don't have to have liver. So that's it.
Yeah, I'm going to go carnivore in November also.
Nice,
but I am going to allow garlic, and I'm going to allow herbs.
Okay.
Other than that, no veggies at all.
Okay. Well, I mean, people like Amber O'Hearn, they're strict carnivore for health reasons, and if she eats a little bit of garlic, it sends her, it does awful things to her. But she can eat wasabi, which is interesting. You would have thought wasabi would be way more evil than garlic, but no.
I don't know. There must be something in the biology, the chemistry of garlic itself that is a problem for her. Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife has a problem with onions. She can't eat onions. She can eat onion powder.
Yeah.
But not the actual body of the onion, or else she'll be in the bathroom all night.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, the only person who did over Lactober with me was Karen Ogilvie.
Oh, she did?
She did. So she did over Lactober for the whole month of of October. I'm not aware of anybody else who did it, but I think that there's a couple of people like you're definitely doing Carnivember with me, and I think a few other people are doing it as well. So welcome to those who are. I hope you enjoyed as much as I plan to.
That's very cool, and I'm very glad that you did it.
Took one for the team.
That's all. You took one for the team, so we didn't have to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course, if you have anything you want to tell us, something we said wrong, something you don't agree with, some more research that you found to support or refute anything we've said, send it by email to dudes@2ketodudes.com or post it on our website.
And you can follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at 2ketodudes. Make sure to use the hashtag 2ketodudes.
And of course, if you want to join the free ketogenic forum, it's forum.2keto.com. And you can have a look at the ketogenic forum without needing to create an account by starting with success.2keto.com.
And if useless swag is your fancy, like t-shirts, coffee mugs, and other junk with witty keto sayings on them, head over to gear.2keto.com.
And if you want a shot at getting some of that swag for free, join the 2Keto Dudes fan club. You'll be eligible to win something in every show. Go to fanclub.2keto.com.
And if you feel like supporting our forums and all of the podcasts we produce, think about making a monthly pledge on our Patreon page at patreon.2keto.com.
You can also see all of our podcasts and other videos on YouTube at youtube.2keto.com. And it appears that Carl's neighbour in his hotel has just started a karaoke party. So I'm going to finish up the whole thing. Look,
Thank you.
If you haven't already, go leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That's how new people get to know about what we do. 2Keto Dudes is brought to you by 2Keto LLC, who strives to support the low-carb community with podcasts and other publications. Well, Carl, keep calm keto on and just don't karaoke.
Keep calm, keto on, and I'm so glad this is over. We'll see you next time on 2 Keto Dudes.